Hey.
So a little fun fact for y'all, but I've actually eclipsed the 1 year mark of posting videos on this wonderful YouTube platform, and I can't thank y'all enough. I wasn't quite sure what I was getting myself into when I first started, but I think that even though I did take some breaks here and there, I think I'm in a good spot. I think I'm producing good videos. I've definitely grown a lot so far already, but again, it's all up to you guys for continuing to watch and support the stuff, so I thank all of you guys for that. And so as a treat for the 1 year anniversary mark, I'm doing something that I told myself at the start that I would never ever do just because I hate the entire concept of these things, but I am dropping a top 50 current best players in the NBA list. Now obviously the big disclaimer at the start of this video is that this is entirely subjective, it's my opinion, these are my thoughts, I don't care, I'll debate people in the comments if you keep it lighthearted, you know, don't take this too seriously. But I did just want to throw it out there, try to get some production value out of it and put some good editing into this video. So that's the main reason why I'm making this, just to see what I can do, have some fun with that sort of stuff. Because I swear to God, if y'all come into these comments with hate and start just throwing takes at me, that's not the point of this video. But for some context behind the rankings, no injuries, so guys like Kawhi, Jamal Murray, I'm just treating them like they're healthy. And I really didn't have any rhyme and reason for every single player in every single spot, but I did take into factor, you know, who would I want on my team the most heading into this next season, and probably the biggest factor that played into it was how they play in the playoffs, just because that tends to be where most people's opinions on players come out the strongest. So without further ado, I guess we'll hop into ranks 50 through 41 and just get this thing started and have a good time. So starting off here, one thing that kind of surprised me, or at least took me off guard, was that I was shocked at how many all-stars are in the 50 to 41 range. Guys like Domantas Sabonis and Nikola Vucevic, although I guess, you know, they're centers, so their rankings are a bit disproportionate to the overall rankings, if that makes sense. Oh, and also at this point, I'm just gonna throw it out there. I made these rankings and finalized these graphics a few weeks ago, so already I've had some opinions change and players that I would like to see in a different spot. And one of those is LaMelo Ball, because coming into making this list, I really wanted to have him in the top 50 somewhere, but most likely towards the back half where I have him here at 43. But now that I'm reflecting on this list, I don't even know if I would have him top 50. I love LaMelo, he's going to be a great player in this league, he's going to be a very exciting player to watch in this league, but after one rookie season where he'd even play the entire year, I might have jumped the gun a bit too soon. I also feel like I'm disrespecting Anthony Edwards by placing LaMelo all the way at 43, and for that I feel bad because Ant Edwards is one of the just coolest guys in the league right now. Julius Randle might get some hate from the Knicks fans on this one, but we saw him in the playoffs, we saw what he did. I'm just going to leave it at that. He's a great player, but he's just not quite up to par with some of the guys that we'll see in these next couple of tiers. As we move on to ranks 31 through 40. Now right off the bat, you're going to see that I got Draymond exactly one spot ahead of Julius Randle, and this is the stuff I mean, especially come playoff time. If you're going to give me the option of taking Draymond or Julius Randle to go win a championship, I'm taking Draymond Green at least 7 times out of 10. Outside of that, we have a bunch of other big names that will probably get a lot of discussion in this area. Sixers fans are probably appalled to see that Jaylen Brown is ahead of Ben Simmons by 1 spot, and as a Celtics fan, all I have to say to that is weep. And Russell Westbrook at 33 I was really back and forth on Westbrook in this list making, but the way I imagined it was I looked at all the players that were ahead of him and behind him, and I kind of just did a swap in my head where I would replace them on the Lakers in Westbrook's spot. And if I felt like the team got better with the new player, then I ranked them ahead of them. Again, sometimes there was just little rhyme or reason to the placement on some of these players. But at the end of the day, I think it's fair to say that Westbrook is still an all-star caliber player, but he's certainly on his decline at this point. So placing him at 33, I think that's a decently fair spot for him. Another player I want to briefly mention is DeAndre Ayton at 36. I've been back and forth switching sides of the bandwagon on whether DeAndre Ayton is good or not. Because of the way I see it, Ayton is a very skilled player, there's no doubt about that, and he's still developing, so plenty of time for him to grow and reach an ultimate peak. But at the same time, I think he is in a very, very good situation for himself right now, where he doesn't have to do as much work to get his shots off and shoot a higher percentage, because he has two of the greatest shot creators in the league in Devin Booker and Chris Paul, who simply just help him get better looks, if that makes sense, which ultimately better looks means a better field goal percentage and just more points scored and more impact. So again, I'm not calling DeAndre Ayton bad by any means, but I do think that his situation helps him excel a bit more than he might elsewhere. And now we move into the next tier, where we're going to hit the middle point in this top 50 list. In the high 20s, you'll find a duo of champions in Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday. And I tried not to let recency bias get too mixed up into this whole listing, because I think it's safe to say Middleton and Holiday both proved themselves as good players, great players even, in this league after helping Giannis go out and win a championship for Milwaukee. But at the same time, I look at the players that I have ranked ahead of them, and the guys ahead of them are just better players, and that's an okay thing to say. And then you look at the two players ahead of them with Bam and Rudy Gobert, and I know Jazz fans might get a little heated that I have Bam ahead of Gobert, but that's just the truth to me. I like Bam's versatility way more than Rudy Gobert's depoy abilities, just because I just think Bam could fit a whole lot of more situations cleanlier than Rudy Gobert, as we've seen him have some mistakes and just some trends in the playoffs that ultimately lead to his and the Jazz's demise. From there, we've got some empty stats guys who just deserve a little bit more respect in my opinion. We got De'Aaron Fox, who I'm planning on making a video about in the coming days. And then we got Karl-Anthony Towns, who I'm really hoping the Timberwolves can get some sort of traction this year, because Karl-Anthony Towns has been long disrespected for too much time now. He is a great player with great offensive talent. I repeatedly say this, but he is one of the most offensively gifted bigs the NBA has ever seen, and I really want fans to see that and respect it. And then lastly, Chris Paul. I felt like it was a little too high, but at the same time, he did amazing with the Thunder 2 seasons ago, brought them all the way to a 5 seed. Then we saw him with the Suns, helped them lead them to a championship appearance, and I felt bad about putting Chris Paul any lower, because even though he as a player isn't, he's old, he's getting up there in age, there's no denying that, but the man still knows how to win basketball games. Now we're getting to the real cream of the crop with selections 20 through 11. The bottom 3 in this tier are real interesting because they all play the guard position. They're all a similar archetype where they score the ball a lot, add in a little bit of playmaking, a little bit of defense, but I think I have them in the perfect order. People might say Booker is a bit too low, seeing as he just brought the Suns to a championship appearance, but I think he's in the right spot. I think it's safe to say that Bradley Beal is just barely a better player. He's a better scorer. I don't really know about the playmaking. It's probably close, and you could choose whichever side you want there. But I think honestly, if you put Beal on that Suns team, they might have won the championship in the end. I don't know, that's a hot take. Don't take that too seriously. I'm just throwing stuff out here at this point. The next is Jimmy Butler, who was all too much disrespected last year. It gets lost in the fact that the Miami Heat as a whole were a really bad team last season, but Jimmy Butler was one of the lone bright spots. He was even getting some MVP recognition by the end of the season because he was carrying the Heat back into playoff contention. So please, when you slander the Heat, do not include Jimmy Butler's name. And then from there, I think the rest of this tier is pretty self-explanatory. I just recently did a video on Donovan Mitchell highlighting why I am so high on him, because I know 13 might be too up in there for some people. So we will try to get through this thing quickly and get into the top 10. Anthony Davis, I think he's most likely to probably fall out of the top 10 in this coming season, but I just can't look past the absolute brilliant performance he had in the bubble. I mean, if you look back at his shooting numbers, they were just godly and something that I don't know if we'll ever see a man of his size and build ever do again for any stretch of games. Luka Doncic at 9, pretty self-explanatory. I mean, in his 3rd season in the league, he was getting MVP votes and was the favorite at the start of the season, so he's only going to go up from here. He'll probably spend quite a few years at the top of these lists. And surprisingly, at 8, we have the reigning MVP, which I think says a lot about the amount of talent that we have in the NBA, and just another reminder of how awful this 2021 season really was, with its injuries and just tight schedule and all of that horrendous stuff that I hope we never have to see again. At 7, James Harden is someone who I feel like should be higher, But I think if I were to redo this list right now, I'd put him at 6 and move him up a spot. But that still just feels wrong for some reason. I tried telling myself for months during this past season that James Harden was the best player on the Nets, and I really tried to get myself to believe it. But in the end, I found out I was wrong. Very wrong. Then at 6 we have Joel Embiid, who is another person who I think is heavily disrespected and gets nowhere near enough credit for what he's done for Philly in his career. And it really is unfortunate that the team around him has never been suitable for him, because this man has had some dominant playoffs in his entire career so far, and yet the Sixers have absolutely nothing to show for it. Then at 5 we have Kawhi Leonard, because he's Kawhi. He's up there. I think people are forgetting that Kawhi was very quietly having the best postseason of any player in the league last season until he ended up having the ACL injury, and it should not be forgotten. Then at 4, this one might get some backlash, but we have LeBron, and at this point in his career, I think it's safe to say that LeBron isn't the same that he once was. I'm by no means calling him a bad player, but when you look at the 3 guys that I have ahead of him, I just don't know how you can say that he's better than them at this point in his career. So again, LeBron fans, don't come at me. 4 is still a great spot. He might even climb up to 3 or move up after the season if he does well, but as of now, based off of what we've seen from LeBron recently, he's 4. I'm sorry. Then coming in at 3, we have Kevin Durant, who speaking on the James Harden stuff, I quickly learned that he is the best player on this Nets team still. I think it's awesome that after having the Achilles injury, I was nervous that we were not going to get the same Kevin Durant that we had before, who was able to dominate most of the 2010s, and I was right. Because we did not get the same Kevin Durant. We somehow got a better Kevin Durant who is more matured and just ultimately is even more of a stone-faced killer than he was before. I mean, even looking back at these most recent playoffs, he almost single-handedly took down the eventual champion Bucks as Kyrie and James Harden were on the bench with injuries. Then at 2 we have Steph Curry, solely because he remains the most lethal offensive weapon that the league has ever seen. I mean, Curry was legitimately getting MVP praise while his team wasn't even in the seedings for the playoffs, so they were in the play-in looking into the playoffs. And yet Curry was still getting MVP votes and talk and discussions because he was playing that good. And I'm very, very excited to see him back with Clay and just Dre being healthy and all the guys being healthy, and it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be very, very enjoyable basketball. And then at the number 1 spot, I think we all saw this one coming based off of his finals performance, but we have Giannis, the current champion and finals MVP of the NBA. I mean, he's just superhuman at this point. Had the knee injury against the Hawks in that series, then comes back a week later, has a game-saving block, a game-winning dunk, drops 50 in the series-clinching win in Game 6 over the Suns, and I just don't know how you could put anyone else in the number 1 spot as we approach the next season. So with this now wrapped up, I'll show you the full list with 1 through 50 so y'all can get your screenshots off, do whatever you want with that, save it, go to the comments now and drop your hot takes for me to respond to and just talk about and all that good stuff. But before I go, just another reminder, this is a subjective list, these are all my opinions. Again, if you were to ask me right now to list off my top 50 players in the NBA, it'd probably have quite a bit of shakeup. So again, don't take this too seriously. And if you've made it to this point in the video, then congratulations, you're a real one. Now, if you enjoyed this video, maybe think about hitting the subscribe button. It should be somewhere in this general direction. Or if you're not sure yet, maybe check out another video which should be in this general direction. Either way, thank you for watching.